A CNBC report said Russia owns 53% of the Arctic coastline, with the Pentagon warning that Moscow has been investing heavily in military infrastructure in the Arctic, with an estimated 50 military or dual-use bases operating. Russia's Northern Fleet numbers around 70 nuclear submarines and surface warships and is deployed to protect its Arctic infrastructure, as well as the Northern Sea Route, which is projected to see upward of 50 million tons of cargo this year, increasing every year as the ice melts. Meanwhile, Beijing has also expanded its activities there in recent years, labelling itself a near-Arctic state, as Tony mentioned, under its so-called Polar Silk Road as a branch of its Belt and Road Initiative. China operates the Yellow River Station at Svalbard, Norway, supporting year-round scientific and environmental research, and runs polar research vessels like Xuelong 2, which the US Coast Guard recently tracked north of Alaska. However, Chinese government sources, naval experts, and Western analysis suggests that China's Navy and Coast Guard are operating more frequently in Arctic waters, including patrols and joint exercises with Russia in seas such as the Bering Sea. Martin, let me come to you. So China has rejected, there's an article in the Global Times, Trump's statement that Russian and Chinese ships surround Greenland. But do you think that this is, sort of diverting or misdirecting people from the security threat that Trump has outlined?
I definitely believe that there are security threats associated with growing Chinese and Russian presence in the Arctic. Of course, the geography is another issue. Most of the highest presence of Chinese and Russian vessels is in the Barents and Bering Sea, so some distance away from Greenland. Nevertheless, we should not lose sight of the fact that some of the most pressing non-traditional security threats are related to environmental degradation, and both China and Russia, on top of just the sheer desire for material control of the Arctic region, also have very ambitious plans for explorations of very robust deposits of critical raw materials that are in the Arctic, not only in Greenland, and also potentially drilling for Arctic oil reserves. And this type of interference with a very volatile environments would be of tremendous detriment to humankind at large. So it's not a threat specific to any individual nation state.
Some analysts do say that we need to change our thinking of the Arctic. The Arctic always was very periphery, but actually it's central. They talk about it as being the linchpin, even between the South China Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. I just want to quote from an Atlantic Council article. They say Greenland is the geostrategic linchpin connecting the Arctic, North America, and Europe. At the same time, they also say that the melting ice caps allow movement of Russian and Chinese military ships between the Pacific and the Atlantic.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, if something happened in Europe and U.S. forces in Alaska or in Asia want to support Europe, they'll have to go through the Arctic, right on top of it. And during recent exercise where we deploy European forces in an Asia scenario, where the second wave of forces coming in, we deploy the European forces, U.S. forces in Europe into the Asia region through Alaska, you go through the Arctic. So if adversary controls that area, they can interrupt this mutual support, the forces movement, okay? That's why it is important, because just in case we get into a conflict with China, where continental U.S. forces come to Asia, and European forces come to it. Did you know, actually, from Alaska, the distance from Alaska to Frankfurt is actually very short from Germany. So our forces in Germany fly into Alaska, and I've done that mission from Hawaii to Alaska to Germany and back. It's very much shorter than going through the fat part of the Earth. So it is critical, as you indicated. Therefore, making sure it's still open and free for us to do what we need to do is important for both sides.
Right. And so, Tony, do you think, rather than just perhaps wanting to put in more sensors and create this early warning platform, is it that they just simply want to, build an entire new military headquarters, possibly recognizing the importance of the Arctic for U.S. homeland defense?
I think we just want to make sure it's accessible, because building the entire headquarters and forces up there, it might be a very expensive adventure that doesn't really have a day-to-day function per se, where the deterrence in the European side, standing right at the border, Poland, in case the Russians come through, right around Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Philippines, in case the China do something foolish. That type of real-time deterrence is important. The northern part, like I say, it basically controls the movement of forces, and the monitoring type activities, it's not as critical day to day. So if you put your forces day to day there, then you are reducing forces somewhere else. So that is a consideration, whether we want to do that or not.
Right. And Marcin, I mean, trying to understand it from the US's point of view in terms of that national security and perhaps what they want to, expand on Greenland doesn't mean that it's right. In a previous show, our guest rejected the parallel between Venezuela and Taiwan. What is your take on the situation that Greenland finds itself and Taiwan's situation?
I definitely believe that, there are some parallels that we can draw on. The first one that comes to mind is the point that I raised earlier about the dynamics with indigenous populations. It seems like neither the indigenous populations of Greenland nor those of Taiwan are really asked about their opinion, and this only further cements the perception of these two land masses as mere pawns in geopolitical dealings. But I think that more importantly, the events such as the ones in Venezuela, or now the threat of US annexation of Greenland, are normalizing in the international system the dominance of strength over principles. And this creates very difficult precedents